You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to the program. Joining me now, Governor Sarah Sanders. Always good to see you. The 47th governor of the state of Arkansas, first female governor, first daughter of a former governor, all of those good things there. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Been a full year, been a whirlwind year. We're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on. First of all, just kind of summarize what you think the year has been for you. Is it everything that you expected, or was it a little different than you expected?
You know, in this business and in this world, there are always surprises and things that you can't plan for, but I think it's been an incredible year. Really proud of what we've been able to accomplish, set out with some really big, ambitious key priorities in the first legislative session. We were able to get something done in every one of those areas. Education probably being the biggest thing I talked about during the campaign. It's been about 2 years traveling all over the state, talking about what our plans would look like, and we were able to pass Arkansas Learns, raising teacher pay from going to the very bottom to top 5 in the country overnight, investing in literacy, providing parental empowerment, taking, again, our state from the bottom to now we're ranked number 2 in the country when it comes to parental empowerment, making sure that every student in the state has access to a quality education. That was one of my biggest priorities. I've said for a long time, if at the end of all this I can be known for one thing, I'd like to be the state and probably the country's education governor. I think we're off to a really good start on that front.
At the end of all of this, meaning 2 years, 4 years, or 8 years?
We'll
see. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk a little bit later on.
So I feel like I've got for sure a solid 7 still in me, and looking forward to each year building on the things that we did the previous year.
The first year is your honeymoon year, so it's only going to get harder from here on out.
That's what they say. You know, it helps that I have a pretty good phone a friend in my dad, who served in this role for nearly 11 years, so he's pretty good about giving advice. Thankfully, I actually had a honeymoon year. He didn't have that. So he came in a pretty tumultuous time and very different set of circumstances. But I feel like we had a great relationship with the legislature. We were able to work really closely with them over the past year, and I expect we'll be able to continue to do that over the years to come.
All right, let's talk about some deep dive into some things that you probably don't want to talk to me about, but we're going to anyway, policy. Let's talk about the Board of Corrections controversy that has dominated the headlines lately, and let's begin with Joe Porfiry. He is coming on to your staff as an advisor, senior advisor. Yeah. What role is he going to perform for you? How are you going to fund that?
Obviously, the job that he'll be taking on, one of the biggest responsibilities that we have in all of government is to protect the people of the state. And so we're always looking for ways that we can strengthen the safety and security of our communities. And he'll work closely with us, working with our Department of Public Safety, continuing to advise on things that deal with corrections and all of the things that fall under that umbrella. And I know he'll continue to play a key role, just as he has as the Secretary at Corrections.
And I presume that there's going to be another Secretary of Corrections. I know there's litigation to kind of hash through some of this too, but let's just kind of take the controversy in totality here. Sure. You could have met with the Board of Corrections and Joe Porfiry ahead of time and hammered out some sort of deal. I sense that did not happen. Can you tell me why it kind of got to the point of confrontation that it did? Versus hammering out some sort of agreement on the front end? You know,
this is a group that's frankly fought us kind of every step of the way. They were against us on the PROTECT Act. We requested to make expansion for beds. Every single thing we're doing, we're looking for how do we do a better job protecting the people of Arkansas. And they fought us every step of the way and kind of kicked off a little bit of an adversarial relationship. Certainly not what I would like to see, not what I want to see going forward. But ultimately, I'm responsible for enacting policies that are going to make people safer. That's what we're focused on doing, and we're going to continue moving forward with that. I'm confident that the Attorney General and his team will be successful in litigation at the court side, and we'll hopefully have Secretary Porfiry back in place, and we'll continue moving forward with policies that actually help protect people.
There's another way to correct this situation, and that is Amendment 33 is in conflict with the state statute. This is what the litigation is mainly about, in terms of who has the power, control to make these executive branch decisions. Could you see possibly leading some sort of ballot initiative to change Amendment 33 or asking the legislature to refer that as a constitutional amendment in the 2025 session, which would push it off a few years, but you could act more quickly on clearing up that constitutional discrepancy if you wanted to now?
Yeah, I certainly never want to take anything off the table, but right now our focus is working with the Attorney General's office, working with our partners in the legislature to move forward with legislation that's already been passed and getting a decision from the court. And I think it'll end up on our side, and we're going to keep pushing that front first.
So that's a no, you're not going to push for a ballot initiative?
Not today, Roby,
okay.
Not today.
Just making sure. All right, the infamous $19,000 lectern took center stage for longer than I'm sure you would have cared for it to.
I think longer than the people of Arkansas
longer
would
than I care
for
it to as well. I know that that's under a legislative audit right now. I don't want to rehash all of this and go into it. I think just the question I want to ask is, if you could, in hindsight, if you could handle that situation differently, what would you have done different about that?
I think our team followed every rule and protocol, and so I don't think there's anything necessarily that I would have done differently at this point.
More tax cuts always on the table. You've been very clear that this is a goal of yours. It's obviously been something the Republican legislature, former Governor Hutchinson, started 10 years ago. What specific size tax cut do you think you're looking at? We're heading into the fiscal session here. You've got to start working with some budget numbers right now. Do you have can you give me a specific dollar amount or specific percentage that you think you're
wish
aiming for?
I got to wave the magic wand and make those decisions all by myself, but I do have to work with the legislature on what that looks like. Certainly we do, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get close to what we did this past year. I don't know if it'll be quite as big as both of the tax cuts from last year, but I'm certainly confident we'll be able to do something. But we're going to work closely with partners in the legislature, our team at DFNA. We want to do this responsibly and do it over time, but we're going to continue to chip away at that income tax as much as possible until hopefully and ultimately we get to zero. You're not even floating numbers right now? Not yet. Yeah. I know you want me to break that out on your show. Well, that's, again, it's a conversation. I want to be very careful in how we do it, and I don't want to put our state in a bad position, and so we're continuing to look at forecasts and numbers, and we'll be working closely with our team and our budget team to get that, and hopefully that'll be in the next couple months. All right, two big initiatives. You've talked about one of them already here, the LEARNS Act. You obviously it's in the implementation stage right now. As it continues in that implementation and you see some things kind of coming together, because there's a lot of pieces and moving parts to it, what are you thinking about needs to be altered, what needs to be tweaked, what might you start working on some changes in that law right now based on what you're seeing? Right now, I think we're in still the pretty early stages, like you said, of the implementation, which is frankly the most difficult part. Yep. Getting the legislation through and passed is the first big step, but the hardest part is really the execution and the implementation. I'm really confident in the team that we have at the Department of Education. We have a massive number of people that are part of the working groups that are putting the rules together, people from every corner of the state, teachers, principals, superintendents, as well as parents and other stakeholders. So that's the part we're in right now. Some of those pieces are kind of on the completion side and in a good spot. I feel really comfortable with where we are. I do think that there will be some gradual rule adjustments that take place over the next couple of years, but there's nothing specific that I think that we have to tweak just yet. Just a quick follow-up on that too. I think as we move into the fiscal session, year two, we're going to set the budget for the education freedom accounts. They'll start planning for year three too, and that's when everything goes universal on those. That's going to be a potential budget buster for you. Are you starting to think about what that number might be and how you might plan for that? You know, we put those things in place at the very beginning of the conversation. Well, nobody would give me a year three estimate on what it was going to cost. Well, we did a forecast out, and that was something that was really important to a number of the legislators, as well as our team, was looking at what year 3, 4, 5, all the way through year 10, and what that looked like based off of historical data in places that had implemented universal choice. choice. So I feel pretty comfortable that we've allocated and set money aside, and we'll continue monitoring that as the program grows. But right now, I feel like we are in a good place with the budget for the money that we've set aside and allocated based on forecast from our team prior to the legislation even passing.
All right, got to take a quick commercial break. I'm going to pick up with Learns when we come back, though, with Governor Sarah Sanders. Stay with us.
In Arkansas.
Welcome back to the program. We are visiting with Governor Sarah Sanders. It's our 1-year anniversary of being in office. We were talking about the Learns Act before the break. I want to pick back up with the Learns Act and ask this question. So we were talking about education freedom accounts. They could cost a significant amount of money when it goes universal in year 3. My question to you is just from a policy perspective. Do you think that you will keep the same amount of money in that pot and the amount of the education freedom accounts will be less, or do you think you will find more money to put into those freedom accounts so that the money stays up there around the $7,000 range, but it would cost a lot more because you would have more people accessing it?
As of right now, I don't see a reason to adjust. We've allocated money in preparation for years 2, 3, and beyond, and so I feel comfortable with where we are. If something changes, obviously we're constantly watching budgets. We have teams that look at the numbers all day, every day, and they live and die by the spreadsheets that they're putting together. And so we're constantly monitoring if we have to adjust at some point. Certainly we want to be prepared for that, but I feel comfortable with where we are right now.
Since no one gave me a year 3 budget when I asked what a year 3 budget was going to be, would you like to give me that number now? What are you expecting it to cost in year 3 when it goes universal? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Well, I don't think there's a hard and fast, because you have to be a little bit fluid in how many people will participate in the program. But based off of what we've seen in places where they've opened up other universal choice and education similar to education freedom accounts, we feel comfortable with where we are. The big thing, though, at the end of the day, while we want people to be able to be empowered to make decisions about where and what is best for their kids and how they should be educated, at the same time, we've invested heavily in public education. A bigger, I would say, investment historically than we have in the last couple of decades in the move that we've made. A lot of students will still, their first choice and best choice will still be the public school in their community. We expect that to continue, and that's why it was important not just to open this up, but also to make changes and investments in our public schools so that they continue to get better as well.
Last question on education freedom accounts. It's been the most controversial part of the whole thing, so that's why I'm asking.
It's also, I think, I'm going to disagree with you just for a tiny bit. I know everybody wants to say that it's the most controversial. It's also one of the most widely supported. That part is so often left out of the conversation. Frankly, Roby, I wouldn't be the governor of Arkansas if people didn't want to see these changes implemented, because I spent so much time talking about it, campaigning on it. We spent more than $500,000 advertising just on education alone during the campaign, telling people exactly what we plan to do, and I won with a historic margin, overwhelming victory. That wouldn't have happened if this wasn't what people wanted to see. It may be controversial to a small handful that like to make a lot of noise, but the vast majority of people, and I've been traveling all over the state the last year, we've done events in every corner of Arkansas. There's a tremendous amount of support, and people are excited about what this means for Arkansas, and frankly what it means for students and kids growing up in our state.
I would say too, just to be devil's advocate here, I mean, you didn't lay a lot of details out about what the plan was going to be on the campaign trail, so when those details were revealed in the legislation, I think it was a surprise for a lot of people. And I still hear from critics, even in rural parts of the state, that say my tax dollars are subsidizing private school families in Little Rock, Arkansas, and in Northwest Arkansas. How do you address that criticism? Because that is, truthfully, it is happening for some.
Well, I think that we have to invest in students. We have to stop throwing money into a system that's clearly not working. I ask people all the time, if the system was working, why are we at the bottom? Why are we constantly 50th, 49th, 48th in education? We have to do things differently than we have always done them. One of the only parts people talk about when they look at Arkansas Learns is the school choice piece. They ignore the fact that we're paying our public education teachers far more than we ever have in the past. They ignore the fact that we're investing in literacy in a way that, frankly, Arkansas has never looked at and taken as seriously as we are. School safety, all those things are investments in public education. This is the single biggest investment in public education that we've had in multiple decades. This is something that empowers every student, every community, and that's what we want to see happen. And that's why I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to work on, pass, learns, and now see it implemented.
So for those folks that are critical of the education freedom accounts, the school choice piece of that, so you're just saying you've got to take that part you might not like with the parts that you probably do like.
I'm not saying that you have to just take a part in that way. I'm saying that if you want to protect the status quo, I'm probably not your person. I don't want Arkansas to continue to be at the bottom. I know that we are capable and have the capacity to be competitive with every other state out there, but we have to do things that are transformational and big, and I think we're going to be able to look back at this point 5, 10, 15 years from now and see the change that helps transform our state for the better.
Just make sure you beat Mississippi on all your metrics there. That's my...
You know, what's interesting is Mississippi has actually made significant gains in literacy, and we took a lot of the things that they did in Mississippi and implemented, but even went a step further in Arkansas Learns. One of the things that I think is really important, it's not like we just sat around in a room and said, oh, let's see if this works. We took data-driven information. We took proven things and policies that we know work, and we implemented them here. And I'm looking forward to seeing the positive changes here in Arkansas.
All right, let's shift to another topic, and you've talked about a lot in the last year, and that is that you have said you want to double the tourism economy in Arkansas. I want you to tell me what that means. Does that mean doubling the tourism GDP? Does it mean doubling the tourism workforce? Does it mean doubling the amount of taxes that we collect off tourism? How are you going to measure doubling the tourism economy?
I think the biggest piece that we can look at is the revenue that tourism brings in. It's our second biggest industry behind agriculture, which is obviously something that is really important to our state, to our culture. We want to protect that. While we do that, I think we can really invest. And some of it's not investing with money, but investing with resources that we already have in telling our story better so that more and more people want to come and experience all that Arkansas has to offer.
Don't go camping next week. I'll just tell you that. It's going to be like 2 degrees at nighttime. I would not
Yeah,
advise
I
it
will
there.
probably pass on that, but you know, something
You're not
that
even go out there and hunt in the-
I was going to say I'm going duck hunting next week, and that's a good time to go. Is just make sure you have lots of hand warmers, and you may want to double up on socks. But we could use some cold weather to come in to bolster Arkansas's duck hunting over the next couple weeks.
All right, 2 more topics I want to get to. We've got a little bit of time left. All right, you held a Capitol for Day in Hope. You've done a couple of these things around the state. What do you get from those? Can you give me an illustration of something you come back to the office and say, I learned this yesterday, we're going to make a change on this?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I love so much about it is that you're interacting with so many different sectors of the community. We go in, we take the entire cabinet, senior staff, and while I'm doing a series of, 7 to 10 events throughout the day, the cabinet is also going into their agencies. We've seen a couple of small things. I toured a DHS office in one of the very first Capitol for a Day, one of the county offices that we did, and some of the people that answer the phones, they said, if we could just change these 2 things in the way that we process calls that come into the system, it would make us a lot more efficient and a lot faster in getting responses and information back to people. We were able to quickly make those changes, and so sometimes it's a little thing. Yesterday in Hope, Arkansas, we had the chance to announce a massive expansion, historic for Southwest Arkansas. My parents are both from Hope, and so it was neat to be back in that community and get to announce a $40 million investment by the Hope Making Company with the addition of almost 300 new jobs in that community. So getting to be part of some of the really big moments, but also looking at some of the small things that you can do that just make government a little bit better and a little more efficient each time.
It was $37.5 million and 266 jobs. I think you rounded up there, but I'm going to let
I
you
said almost, but he actually said it was probably going to land closer to 39, so I was pretty close on that one.
Real quickly, GOP primary, you have come out and publicly endorsed former President Donald Trump, whom you worked for. He's always quotable. A few of his quotes from this last week. He has admitted to making $8 million off of foreign governments. He basically, his lawyers argued that he could assassinate his political enemies. He's immune from prosecution on that. How do you support somebody that has that kind of bravado? I don't know what to even call it. I mean, it's to me, it's a line that gets crossed that I can't go over that line.
Yeah, to me, the contrast between what this race boils down to is it's either going to be Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And when you put it in those terms, the choice is pretty clear. Under President Trump,
Would you rather have somebody that would be willing to assassinate his political rivals than the current president?
I think you're taking that quote a little bit out of context, but the contrast of these two candidates is so stark and so drastic. In one case, you have somebody who I think has weakened America both at home and abroad, who has weakened our economy, brought about inflation. There's not a family in America that isn't feeling the impact of Bidenflation, whether they're getting gas in their car,
inflation
groceries.
Has come down very far from where it was when he took office. And
we've made progress.
And jobs are on the increase. Unemployment is low.
I think it's
this economy is not bad right now. GDP was almost 5% last year. I mean,
if you want to be a Biden apologist, that's for you,
I'm just
not
telling
for
you,
me.
that's
I'm
data.
just saying we were making good trade deals. Our border was secure. I had the opportunity to go down to the border to visit Arkansas's National Guard troops. In the time I was standing on the border, I literally watched with my own two eyes hundreds of people coming across. I talked to border agents. They said that over the last month, they had more people come across the border that were on the terrorist watch list in that 1 month than they did the entire 4 years Trump was president. These are national security issues, and we need somebody that's tough enough to stand up, fight back, and we're certainly not going to get that in Joe Biden. To me, the contrast and the records of these two individuals couldn't be more different, and I think our country would be better off under Donald Trump, both our economy, both our safety, our security, than it is under Joe Biden.
Maybe not the safety of his political rivals if he's willing to assassinate them, but we got to end it there because we are out of time. Actually, we're over time, but always good to visit with you, Governor Sarah
Thanks for
Sanders.
having me.
Let's do it more regularly, and I want to get your take after we get off camera here about when you think the GOP primary ends.
Sounds good.
All right. We're back with more after this.